Hello, my name is Gil Zilkha. Welcome to my channel. This is my series entitled Essential Classical Music, where we look at the best recordings of the major classical music works. This video is taken out of my larger video covering the major symphonies. If you enjoy this, I hope you'll go over and look at that larger one. Just know that you don't have to watch it all in one big gulp. It is divided into chapters. It's real easy to just click through and choose whichever symphony that you're curious about. So I hope you enjoy it. And appropriately enough, we're going to start with Ludwig van Beethoven. We're going to go in alphabetical order. Beethoven is, of course, the most popular composer for symphonies, and he was the bridge between the classical and the romantic eras. And it was really this symphony, the Eroica, Symphony No. 3, where he found his voice. It became more of an individual, more romantic, more dramatic. The length of the symphony was, there was more length to it. And for this one, my top choice is Otto Klemperer with the Philharmonia. Recorded in 1959. This is his stereo recording. He did an earlier one in mono in 1955 that some people prefer because it's a little quicker in the first movement. Klemperer famously tended to have slower tempos. But really, I think that this recording is the one that shows him at his best. It gives you the full Klemperer treatment, which was very patient, and instead of just hitting you on the head out the gate, the power built slowly. And I think it's very effective, especially in the Funeral March, which is sort of the heart of the piece, the second movement. Klemperer really plumbs the depths in that movement. It's really a must listen. Now, if you do want a little bit more energy in that first movement, I recommend Herbert von Karajan. Similar to Klemperer in the sort of traditional, heaviness, seriousness, you might say, drama, and the sound is just wonderful in this recording. But definitely more energy in that first movement. This is from Karajan's digital cycle. He did 3 complete cycles of the Berlin Philharmonic of Beethoven symphonies. And generally the first 2 are the ones that people usually recommend because they are more alert and they have more energy. But I think this Eroica from the digital cycle was really his best one. Now, in addition, a little different from Klemperer and Karajan is George Szell and the Cleveland Orchestra. Szell was a conductor who he liked clean articulation. He tended to like faster tempos, but he was never idiosyncratic. And if you want clarity and crispness and energy, this is a great recording for that. The Funeral March is very eloquent. Szell's orchestra is always played beautifully and immaculately. And even though it's 1957, it's a pretty good sounding recording. It's in stereo as well. Also, we have Nicholas Harnoncourt with the Chamber Orchestra of Europe. This was recorded in 1990. This is a period performance. So a lot of you probably know period performance is when you try to replicate instruments from the time of the composer. So before around the mid-19th century, when orchestras became bigger, this performance style tries to emphasize clean articulation, transparency. They usually have faster tempos. And it's somewhat controversial because sometimes that comes at the expense of the full musicality, especially when everything's just going super fast all the time. Not in this recording. Harnoncourt is very musical, and he also has a very pleasant sound. It doesn't sound too stringent. So this is a very good Eroica performance, especially if you want a period performance. Now, a couple of more. These are studio recordings that come before the stereo era. The first one is 1951, Paul van Kempen and the Berlin Philharmonic. This is a traditional performance. It's very powerful, very dramatic. The Berlin Philharmonic in fine form, and van Kempen really understood the emotions of the work very well. So even though it's a little bit limited in sound, it still sounds pretty good, and that's a good recommendation, as well as Erich Kleiber with the Concertgebouw. This is from 1950. Kleiber has a little bit more energy. This recording it grabs you by the throat from the very beginning and just never lets go. It's a real exciting performance, even though it's limited sound. And in those days, the Decca recordings, they could sound a little wiry in the strings, but still the interpretation is great, so well worth seeking out. Now, before leaving the Eroica, I want to touch on a few recordings that are not only mono, but also were recorded live. And the first one I'm going to discuss is Wilhelm Furtwängler. Furtwängler was known for his Beethoven. He was the conductor of the Berlin Philharmonic for several decades. And the thing about Furtwängler is he was of I guess you can call it the subjective school. I like to call it the intuitive school. His performances tended to vary because he conducted in the moment. So the difficult thing is his performances could really be different from one to the next. And the other thing about him is it was really live performances that brought out the best in him. His studio recordings could be comparatively a little bit more stale, still very good. So for example, the Eroica he recorded in studio for EMI with the Vienna Philharmonic. And that's a very good recording because you see his conception of the piece, and that's definitely recommendable if we didn't have anything else. However, we have his live recordings, and that's really what brought out the best in him. So the first one I want to recommend is, this was recorded during World War II in 1944 with the Vienna Philharmonic. And it's very intense, very concentrated. The funeral march is just amazing. The recording quality is really not too bad for 1944. It's definitely limited, but it's fairly clear. However, even more recommendable than that, I would say, is his Berlin Philharmonic recording from after the war. This is from December 8th, 1952. You have to be careful because there's also one from the day before, December 8th. And this one actually sounds really good, even though it's a live recording. It's one of the best recordings Furtwängler ever got in his live recordings. And this one is just masterful in the way he builds the tension and that funeral march. It's just, to me, I don't think I've ever heard one that's that emotionally overwhelming. So that's Furtwängler. Sort of the antithesis of Furtwängler among first half of the century conductors was, of course, Arturo Toscanini. Toscanini was not of the, if you're going to generalize, he was not the subjective, intuitive type. He was more the objective type who believed that the score tells you exactly what to do and you just follow that. And he was a little bit more consistent from recording to recording. However, even that said, I still think even in his case, his live performances would bring more out of him. And I think that's the case here with his 1939 Eroica. Now, another difference with Toscanini is whereas Furtwängler was more like Klemperer in that things built slowly, with Toscanini, he was more like Kleiber, or you might even say more like the period instruments of today, where a lot of energy moving quickly, and this first movement is just ferocious. It's just fantastic. And then the funeral march is very eloquent. It just really sings. So I would say that even though they're such different interpretations, the Furtwängler and the Toscanini are, for me, my favorite Eroicas in terms of interpretation. So that just goes to show that all differences aside, there are many ways to do it. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you did, I hope you'll also take time to click the like and subscribe buttons. And with that, I want to wish you all a great day and happy listening.